You've never met a parent who regretted not vaccinating, but you meet hundreds and thousands who do.
So we took a break after the first leg and we all had time to reflect on what had just happened with this amazing amount of people turning up to tell their stories. And that's when we suddenly realised the unvaccinated people are there for a reason. We need to start the second leg interviewing them as well.
They're not doing vaccinated versus unvaccinated studies because they're frightened of the results. If you did a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, we know what's going to happen. The entire vaccine program would come into question.
They won't do the vax-unvax study. We the people are going to go out there and see for ourselves. What are the unvaccinated like? We know what the injured are like. Let's now look into the world of the unvaccinated. Look at all these unvaccinated children that are alive. Extraordinary.
Hi guys.
All right, so is there anybody here that's had a vaccination? Mommy and Daddy have had a vaccine, but none of you children, not one.
I mean, they have amazing immune systems. When they get sick, we get over it in one day.
Both of my kids are really, really healthy.
Health-wise, she's insanely healthy. I mean, she never gets sick.
They're both insanely intelligent.
Their health is ridiculous.
And they recover fast from things.
My kids are super healthy. They are very healthy kids. They have traveled to many places. My kids have gone to Nicaragua. You can't get more third world country than that, trust me.
With no vaccines?
With no vaccines.
I have super healthy, great, unvaccinated kids.
How is all your health?
Well, we're all healthy and I've never been to a doctor for any reason except a broken arm and a neuromuscular injury.
I have 3 grown children.
They're all grown up. And did you vaccinate your children?
No, I did not. They're all completely unvaccinated. I can probably count on one hand how many times they've had to go to the doctor in their entire life.
I have 15 or 16, I can't keep track, 15 or 16 nieces and nephews, and none of them have received vaccines, and they're all very healthy kids as well.
10 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren, 5th one on the way who will not be vaccinated either. They're all extremely healthy.
They're all so healthy. It's like they don't have asthma. It's like they're not sick all the time. They get a cold and they get over it.
Every time we've been in a situation where my kids have the same thing that the kid next door has, their symptoms are night and day. They fare so much better and heal so much quicker.
I've probably been sick once this year, and it was just a cold. I had a stuffy nose and it lasted for like 2 days.
Even his friends who are partially vaccinated are sicker in general. My kid has missed like maybe a handful of days from kindergarten to 6th grade.
My other friend who has a daughter who is also unvaccinated, I saw her at school, and so I kind of whispered to her, I'm like, so how many days of school has your child missed? And she went, and I said, mine too.
It was so blatant that these children were super, super healthy.
I had never seen health like that. I didn't know that health like that was even possible. Not needing antibiotics in one's entire life.
I've never had an antibiotic in my life.
48.
48 years old, never had an antibiotic, ever.
He's 16 years old, no allergies, no rashes, no ear infection, no colic, no antibiotics.
She's never had an over-the-counter medication, not once.
Neither one has ever had a shot, Tylenol, aspirin, antibiotic.
No antibiotic.
Neither of them, apart from that, have had any antibiotics or any meds.
She has never had an antibiotic.
My daughter had an infected toe and she had antibiotics once for that, but that's been it.
People that I know that do vaccinate, I know their kids have more, seems to me, more health problems. I mean, my kids don't really have any, like definitely no chronic health problems. They've never been on pharmaceuticals. They've never needed, they've gone to the doctor for broken bones, which is why it's one thing I like doctors for.
The totally unvaccinated kids are always the most healthy ones. So my daughter also had like 3 ear infections before she was 6 months old. After that 6-month appointment and we stopped, she hasn't had one since then.
Nothing. She was perfectly healthy.
Robust health.
Yeah.
She's never had an ear infection. Neither of them have, actually.
What about ear infections?
No.
Because you're 14, you must have had at least one ear infection in your life.
No.
My daughter is now 12 and has never had one single ear infection.
Ear infections?
No, none of my kids have had ear infections at all.
Whatever?
No, none of them.
See the number of children in these unvaccinated populations that have never even had an ear infection. I mean, I can't imagine that. My son was a walking ear infection. All we did was toss antibiotics down his throat in order to keep the ear infections at bay. And now you have these children who are unvaccinated, and the significant, large proportion of them have never seen an ear infection. That is just nigh into incredible.
I mean, our expectation was that these children were going to be constantly sick, that their immune systems were just not supported. The reality was completely the opposite of that.
You have no vaccine at all? Never. I'm in my 60s. I've never been vaccinated for anything. Anything at all? No, and then I had 2 kids that are now 28 and 30, and they were never vaccinated.
This is Palmer, he's 6. He's been sick maybe 4 days his entire life.
Never had any mumps, measles, chickenpox, eczema, asthma, ear infections, ADD, ADHD,
no ma'am.
autism, ADD, ADHD, peanut allergy. Does he have eczema, allergies, ear infections?
Just big strong muscles and a really smart brain, I think.
I could see the difference in kids. I used to be a kindergarten teacher, so I know what kids, should look like and what they are looking like today. Both of my boys were reading by the age of 4.
My family thinks it's like voodoo, like we're crazy people, and how could you not vaccinate it? But then every time they see our kids, they're like, it's
they
unbelievable
just seem
how healthy
so
they
ahead
are.
of the curve. By 18 months, she's singing songs, she can have conversation.
He's a very bright boy. He's 3 years old and he's learning Mandarin. He knows Spanish, he knows English, he's a bilingual child.
Sign language.
He knows sign language. He's a very bright child.
She does sign language, she speaks Spanish.
Yes, teach him Spanish. 2, yep.
He's speaking 3 languages.
Yep. So he's English, Spanish, and sign language.
They're very smart, and it's actually a challenge to challenge them with reading and math, and they're beyond their level.
They're all highly intelligent, bright-eyed, healthy children.
He's 3 months old and he is so strong.
He's super strong.
Hi.
He's super healthy. He's happy, smiling all the
Where's
time.
Bowie?
I can't get over this 4-month child. It's like basically standing up. I'm just supporting her.
Do it over there, guys.
She is alert. She's so strong. This is the best therapy ever. Grab an unvaccinated baby and cuddle it.
Sorry.
It's perfect. Guys, I'm sorry to report to you, it's the truth. It's what we're seeing out here. We're not making this up. This is the people of America reporting to us their children that are vaccinated and injured, and their children that are unvaccinated and perfectly fine. Everything suddenly became lighter. The minute we invited the unvaccinated into our lives, everything went up like that. So you could do a Sid story, which broke our hearts, and then in would come an unvaccinated family. And it was not long before we could see that their story is the same over and over and over again. Just like the vaccine injured, it's the same over and over again.
Doing this for 15 years now, I'll share with you that the vaccinated kids are the sickest. The partially vaccinated kids are not as sick, and the unvaccinated kids are the healthiest.
I've been in practice long enough that I can actually tell you that the unvaxxed kids are healthier. But I can also tell you that if the unvaxxed kids are a problem, then according to what's out there should be a lot of hospital admissions for my unvaxxed kids getting those things. And I'm seeing the opposite.
The most interesting stories that we did were the first child was injured, or maybe the second, and they go on to have more children and decide not to vaccinate because of the horrors of what's happened. And the difference between their unvaccinated child, the same parents, same everything, is that unvaccinated child is 100% healthy.
Yeah, I have quite a few patients in my practice who have 2 children, and those are great controls because most of them didn't figure out right away, so their child got some vaccines, but they all stopped it fairly early on, and there's a huge difference between the two children and the level of how they were affected. But I mean, if you start looking and pulling in all those people who have that same experience, I think you're going to see the same thing across the board. The level of that second child and how they're affected is going to be much less, if at all, compared to the first child who was completely vaccinated.
Now, did you work this out in time for your next child?
Oh yeah, she's not vaccinated.
At all?
Absolutely not.
Not vitamin K, nothing. I know it's not vaccination, but nothing.
Nothing.
So how is she?
Fantastic. She is she's completely typical, beautiful, smart, caring for her brother. She's been on one antibiotic her whole life. She's a picture of health.
So your other 4 children have no vaccines?
No.
At all?
None.
Wow.
No.
And I better, how you describe them?
Great.
Compared to the vaccinated child?
They're much healthier than the oldest one. They fight disease faster.
My 4 unvaxxed kids are far healthier than my vaccinated child. She, when she gets sick, she gets sicker than the rest of them and more often than the rest of them. She's down for longer than the rest of them. Whether that's vaccine related or not, I don't know, but it seems to be an awful coincidence.
I was in the ER with my oldest all the time, and these 2 are never sick.
When my boys were little, we also had a lot of asthma and breathing treatments and antibiotics over and over and over. No ear infections, but all of those other things.
And these girls don't get what
and
your
these
other
girls,
boys do?
no.
She's never needed anything, and she's 2 years old. By this time, this child had already been at the hospital. He had, had dozens of antibiotics.
Lucas is the only one that's completely unvaxxed. And it's interesting, he's our healthiest child. He has never been sick, never even so much as had a cold.
She's always the last one to get sick and the first one to get better.
His left ear, it was so significant, they actually had to kind of rebuild his eardrum from it. And that's, to me, that's one of the stark contrasts I see is our 13-month-old has had not a single ear infection.
Riley has had none. So Caden gets strep throat about 3 times a year. He also has allergies and ADHD. But we still love you. You're still very smart. So don't worry. Riley has been sick once.
My first is the sickest child that I have. She'll get sick. She'll be sick the longest. She'll be sick the hardest, actually. I mean, I guess she'll feel the worst pain or the most symptoms. Then my other 3, they'll be sick maybe a day and less than 24 hours and they're done and they're fine. Their body really knows how to fight whatever disease they come in contact with.
He is compensated through the vaccine injury compensation program.
My oldest 3 suffer with eczema, suffer with allergies, constipation, and they're the first ones to get sick.
The only time he's gone to doctor for checkups is because he's asked to go and wanted to see what it was like to go to the doctor's office.
You wanted to go to see a doctor? Okay, yeah, right.
Because Keenan has to go so often, and so he wanted to see what it was like to go.
Do your unvaccinated children have all the injuries that we see so commonly in the vaccinated? Do they have the ear infections and the antibiotics and the eczema, asthma, allergies?
None.
Nothing?
No.
So the results of your study is the unvaxxed are supersonic healthy and the vaxxed are not.
Yes, right.
So the conclusion of the unvaxxed studies in your house is what?
That the unvaxxed kids are far healthier.
I don't worry about measles. I don't worry about polio. I don't worry about these things with her because she has a strong immune system. I worry about it with my son who is fully vaccinated because he would not be able to survive any of that, even though he was vaccinated for it.
It hurts me to watch the development, honestly, of my son because I see what my daughter could have done. And I feel an immense guilt for vaccinating her.
So in our scenario, we've got, a control for a lot of different variables. Same genetics, same mother and father, same environment, all 3 children. And the key discriminator that makes these children different is the presence or degree to which they're vaccinated.
Have a look at these vaccinated, unvaccinated families, which are controlled for genetics, they're controlled for their food intake, their environment, and everything else, and consistently we're seeing the unvaccinated, never vaccinated children are far healthier.
So we ever hear ear infections, antibiotics, high-pitched scream from the vaccinated, unvaccinated, none of the above. And that became probably the most exciting revelation of the whole tour.
Now that I've seen so much of it and seen so many vaccinated and unvaccinated family members with the same thread, it's undeniable that an unvaccinated child's immune system is going to be that much more functional, that their brains actually function better. And when you understand how vaccines work and what the components of vaccines, including aluminum and all of the inflammation, do to anybody, no matter what your age, it makes complete sense that in the long run, that child's going to be much more functional and much healthier and able to do battle against any disease that comes along, the majority of which have no matching vaccine.
When you get out into the population and you start to meet people who, because they've heard of our stories, have not vaccinated their children, and you see these wonderful, healthy, happy, robust children, then it just makes all the difference in the world.
And these are the children that actually now we need to protect above all others. Not force them to be vaccinated by rule of law, but to protect them, because they're going to be looking after the damaged children in the future.
There's no question about what we saw. What we all collectively saw was the same thing. Health, health, health for the unvaccinated, injury, injury, injury with the vaccinated. Same story.
That doesn't mean they're never going to get anything. You know, the only thing it says to me, my kids are vaccine free, my kids will never, ever, ever be injured, ever. With 100% certainty, they'll never be injured.
I mean, if I was a new parent listening to these unvaccinated stories over and over and over again, it would be game over for me. I'm going your way.
Yeah, I don't understand why you wouldn't. You know, if you're seeing an unvaccinated child, completely healthy, thriving, alert, and then you see all these sick kids that are constantly going to the doctor and on antibiotics and vaccinated, and you see all the eczema that they have, or asthma, allergies, all these different things that kids are affected with. Choosing a healthy child versus an unhealthy child, that's really your choice.
When I heard about the bus, I was over the moon. And when we finally were able to see the bus directly and sign Steve's name on the bus, it was such an emotional moment.
You saw the emotion in the person that was either injured or the parents of the injured or dead child as they wrote their name. It was like a relief for them to write the name on the bus. Like someone is hearing them, someone is saying, yes, you're not alone. Yes, this did happen.
It gave a voice to the voiceless people who are cooped up in their homes, taking care of vaccine-injured children and vaccine-injured adults. And I knew that people would come out in droves.
The people are everything. So once the people started talking, which they did in fact, and this is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's the other side have to wave the white flag now. It's over.
It's not like we're gaining anything by speaking out, you know? We're losing friends and family members, people won't talk to us, you're getting kicked out of mommy groups, you're getting kicked out of doctor's offices. It's not to our benefit to speak out, but if my story, or if any of our stories will help save one child from being injured or dying, then it's worth it. Because you can't walk away from something like this and know the truth and not say anything. You can't.
What have we done to all these people? We've taken their lives as they should have been. We've destroyed the brains of countless people around the world.
It can change, and it will change, and we will win this battle, if that's what it is. And we will win it through the parents' stories. We will win it through the parents telling their truth. We'll win it through the doctors and nurses standing up and saying, this is what I know to be true.
If I had seen that vaccines can cause injury, outside of autism, injury beyond belief, if I'd heard that the doctors, the medical professionals, had no training in vaccines, and if I had seen the health of the unvaccinated, there is no way I would have feared measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, all these things that we vaccinate our children for. I wouldn't have feared them.
Vaxxed, the film, will get a lot of credit. But the greatest credit, I really believe, to this movement and the change we will one day see will be owed to those parents out there, to those that told of their injuries, that were no longer afraid, those that brought their unvaccinated children and their stories forward, those who were brave enough to tell their story, that moved others to come and tell their story. And now all over the world, people telling their stories. That is the movement. That is what really happened. That bus, this tour, the people's story is what has changed the climate and the discussion around vaccines.
And we'll look back at this experience in 10 years' time and we'll say, what were they thinking?
So the bus can go on and on. We've only scratched the surface.